everyone, it's Cynthia. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do my first ever TBR for the month of October, and since October is Halloween, I thought I'd do a spooktacular TBR. So let's get started. A change in the environment, but I started filming a little later in the day. I don't really have my own lights yet, and where I usually film is my office, which is in the back of the house, and the lighting sucks, and it's getting darker these days, so you get to see where the magic happens in the bedroom. And you also see the rainbow shelf over here that my wife worked very hard on. And you also get to see this cat, who will never look directly at the camera. What is the problem, my son? If you're new here, this is Julian. This is Julian, if you have not met him yet. Now, personally, I always have to read my books in a very particular order, but in celebration of this month, I'm actually collecting all the scary, spooky, creepy, thrilling books that I have, and I'm going to try to cram them all in for this month. So the first book that I have on my TBR is Hungry Ghosts by Stephen Blackmore. Now, because this is a third book in the series, I can't really say too much about the plot without saying spoilers, so just to give a little bit of a background, your main character is a necromancer named Eric Carter. Eric Carter has been going around the country, solving mysteries, trying to make money, all the while trying to outrun his past. The first book, he returns to California, specifically LA, after a death of someone he loves, and shit just kind of goes downhill from there. Now, this is probably my favorite urban fantasy series. Eric Carter is my boy. He is my sweet son. He is my beautiful fuck up. Like, if you ever feel bad about how you're doing as an adult, Eric Carter is doing way worse than you. And what I love so much about him is he is a male hero that fucks up a lot. He makes really bad decisions, wrong calls, bad judgment, and he also gets his ass kicked a lot, and I think that's what I find so likable about him, so I am super excited to read this. Now, the second book in my TBR is also a sequel, and it is called The Borrow Will Send What It May by Margaret Killjoy. This series, which again is the second book in the series, is about Danielle Kane, who is a punk rock anarchist who gets herself mixed up in a bunch of occult situations. I read the first one, The Lamb Will Slaughter the Lion, and I absolutely loved it. This is probably one of my favorite novella series. I will absolutely buy anything that Margaret Killjoy puts out, so I am super stoked to get to reading this one too. Next we have City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. Now, I'm sure if you're watching this, you've been on BookTube long enough that you already know what this book is about. It is a middle grade book by Victoria Schwab, also known as V.E. Schwab, and it is about a girl who could see ghosts and ends up in Edinburgh, Scotland. I love everything that V.E. Schwab / Victoria Schwab writes, so I'm sure I'm gonna love this too. Also like spooky cat companions, so you got me there. Speaking of spooky cat companions, come say hello! Julian, what do you hear a dog outside? Go get it. Right, the next book I have is Toil and Trouble, which is an anthology edited by Jessica Spotswood and Tess Sharp. Now, I have been excited about this book since the beginning of the year. It's probably one of my most anticipated reads. It is several authors, some I've read, some I haven't, who all write stories about witchcraft and women, and I am super stoked. I know I keep saying that, but really, like, everything I'm reading here I am super excited about, and I personally love anthologies. I don't think anthologies get enough hype, but what I love so much about them is they're like little bite-sized morsels of artists' work, and I have found so many authors that I've come to very much so love through all the anthologies that I've read. Shannon Maguire slash Mira Grant, Catherine M. Valenti, there's just so many of them, so I'm really looking forward to new authors to fall in love with this one. Next I have Not Even Bones by Rebecca Schaeffer. Now, I've mistakenly kept calling this book Not Even the Bones for the longest time, so it's really hard for me not to put that extra the in there. But I actually heard of this book not too long before actually receiving it at my local library. From what I could gather, it is about a girl who works with her mother. Her mother slays supernatural creatures, and your main character does well, technically it's necropsies on these creatures, removing organs, bones, and selling their parts because they have magical properties to the highest bidder. Then, of course, some shit goes down. It turns out she is not who she thought she is, and chaos ensues. Honestly, having a main character, technically a teenager, sort of working in the death industry was a really interesting angle. So, and I know that's really only a small part of the story on the whole, but I am interested into how that's worked into the flow. And it just sounds really weird. I haven't really heard anything like this, so I hope it lives up to the hype. Next, we have Contagion by Aaron Bowman. Now, okay, I know I've said this about every single book I've been talking about, but I am super thrilled for this book for a very particular reason. Now, I am kind of a pansy. I'm very easily spooked, but I love sci-fi horror. I feel like it's something we don't really see a whole lot of, like the very first Chronicles of Riddick movie, Pitch Black, had elements of it, but the very first Alien movie, so where you have those like space horror, and I'm not talking Lovecraft, I'm not talking like you see something that's just absolutely bonkers that it breaks your head. I'm talking about like your standard monster, something is coming for you, but in space. And that's essentially what Contagion is. It is about a crew in space that gets an SOS signal from another ship. They go and investigate, and then they find absolute ruin, corpses, and there is someone or something that's going to try to prevent them from leaving. Honestly, I got super heavy Dead Space vibes from this book, so I'm stoked. I know I keep saying that, but no, I am super excited. I really hope that this really does scare the pants off of me. Now, the last fiction book that I have on this list is Sadie by Courtney Summers. Now, I do know that Courtney Summers is a bit of a darling. I haven't read any of her other books, but I know like All the Rage was critically very, very well received, and I do plan on reading her other stuff, but this one really caught my eye. Now, this book is less horror and a little more mystery with maybe a bit of a thriller in it. It is about a girl named Sadie who is charged with taking care of her little sister when her little sister is murdered. There's a botched police investigation, so Sadie takes off on her own in order to solve what really happened to her sister. Now, while she is doing that, someone gets wind of what she is doing and decides to do a mystery podcast about it. Now, I primarily picked this book up because it very much so reminded me of that one NPR podcast that I cannot remember the name of, and that all the Google searching is not helping me with, but it's one of their investigative journalism ones that I absolutely loved, and I felt like this might have like a little bit of that in there, and so I knew I just really needed to pick this up. Alright, so I have one collection of poetry included in this TBR, and that is To Make Monsters Out of Girls by Amanda Lovelace. Now, I have read all of Amanda Lovelace's collection of poetry up until this point. The Princess Saves Herself in this one, The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one, and now this. I've already taken a peek, even though I know this is supposed to be for the month of October, but I was super excited, and just look at this cover. Like that is just gorgeous, and there's also really beautiful artwork in here as well. There's this one particular piece that I really like. Let me try to show you. I mean, look at that. It'll focus. Like, well, I mean, I just love blackbirds, crows, any sort of corvid. I love them. So I am super excited to read this one. Next, one of two nonfiction spooktacular books that I'm going to read for the month of October is Spook by Mary Roach. I personally haven't read any of Mary Roach's books, even though I have bought them all for my wife, but she does primarily nonfiction, exploring deeply into whatever it is that the book is about. I know the first book she put out was Stiff, which was like the secret life of cadavers, which was all about like autopsies and things like that. And this one is Science Tackles the Afterlife. So she takes a scientific approach to supernatural phenomenons. I'm talking about things like spirit boards and ectoplasm and talking to psychics and all sorts of things like that. My wife has already read this and she absolutely loved it, and I promised her I would read it sometime, so why not in October? The last physical book I have in this TBR is Ghostland, An American History in Haunted Places by Colin Dickey. Now, I have owned this book forever. I bought it on the recommendation of Caitlin Doty, Ask a Mortician vlogger and author of Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. And it is all about America, its history in regards to its haunted places. The author explores abandoned asylums and old hotels, hospitals, and kind of shows how all of this is woven into the fabric of American history and story, and it just sounds absolutely interesting, and I am super, you guessed it, stoked that I'm finally going to start this. Alright, so let's see if I could lift this pile. It's not terribly big. I still feel like it's ambitious for 1 month, though, especially since some of them are kind of thick. But, alright. Can we get all of it in the shot? There we go. Yeah, that's not too bad. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books. 10 books. Okay, a little ambitious, but like the Eric Carter series, I could just eat through those. One is a novella, and one's collected poetry, but so yeah, I'm gonna try to read all of these because like this is the month to do so. Okay, so there are a couple of books that are not quite out yet, but will be out before October, but I just don't physically have my hands on them. And I do want to include them in this TBR because I do really want to try to read them for this month because this is kind of the month to do so. Alright, so I have my library app here. Alright, so one book is Strange Grace by Tessa Gratton, and I honestly can't really remember what this is about, so let's pull up the description. Every 7 years, the people of Three Graces send a sacrifice to the woods. The death of their best boy ensures 7 years free from disease, blight, and pain. But this year, the slaughter moon has risen early, and 3, not 1, will run into the forest as a sacrifice. So yeah, sounds pretty spoopy, and what little I've read of Tessa Gratton, I have really liked. So I look really forward to this one. I believe this one has been out for about a year or so. I'm just still waiting for it from my library. and it is called The Ravenous by Amy Lukovics. From what I have read of this book, and this is actually a very recent add to my TBR, is it's kind of like the Virgin Suicides meets zombies. As far as I've read, that's not like a publisher's little quote from it, it's just from what I've read of the book. That's exactly what it sounds like. It's when their youngest sister Rose dies in a fall and their mother is able to bring her back from the dead, the sisters must find a way to satisfy Rose's hunger for human flesh. So, like, I mean, come on. Alright, and the last one that I really hope I get, because I'm one of like I'm number one on the hold list, and that is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kirsten White. I am a super fan of her work. The Conqueror saga, the Idarkin trilogy is so good. It's so fucking good. Like, it's amazing, so I will read absolutely anything she writes, and this is the Frankenstein story told from the perspective of Elizabeth Frankenstein, and it's supposed to be coming out on, like, the 200-year anniversary of Frankenstein being published. So, like, it sounds so good. So good. I'm so excited for that book. Like, again, I usually have to read my books in a particular order, but if I get it in a reasonable amount of time, I might have to move it to the top of the TBR pile. I'm sorry, Eric Carter, my son, you know I love you. But that is it. That is my spooktacular TBR for the month of October. Comment down below if you have read any of these books, if you have any spooktacular suggestions that you think I should read, or just, I don't know, just say hi. Right, thank you very much for watching, and you guys have yourselves a very spooktacular